You're in a relationship with both Mr. Rogers and his wife.
Yes, Your Honor. We all live together. We all sleep in the same bed. We got 3 boys, me and Angela.
Desperate to learn if the man you're in love with is indeed your 3-week-old daughter's biological father. You're a married man, and although you have reason to doubt, you say it would break your heart if you found out today that you're not Annagayle's father. Me
and Angela have known each other for 24 years. We've been married for 20 years. And we met Gracie, they kind of hit it off together. She brought Gracie into the relationship just for herself. I knew she liked women, so I kind of just let her go ahead.
Okay, and how did it progress?
I let them, have their relationship. I got brought into it about a year later. Gracie wanted to have children. Angela told her, she said, the only way you can have children is if Thomas is the father. I agreed.
And as far as the relationship between me and him goes and bringing her in, the relationship, he's a man and he wanted it just as much as me.
You expect that both of these women would only be sleeping with you?
This court session under Judge Lauren Lake unfolds as a deeply complex legal and emotional battle where truth, trust, and responsibility collide. The case begins with a non-traditional family structure stepping onto the evidence stage, forcing the court to examine not just biology, but the fragile relationship between law and justice. At the center is a man involved in a polyamorous marriage, legally married to one woman while emotionally committed to another, both of whom have children whose paternity is now under serious doubt. What initially appears to be a simple request for a DNA test quickly evolves into a layered story of loyalty, regret, and the harsh reality that truth changes everything. Judge Lauren Lake carefully establishes who has come before the court and why. The father figure explains that he lives with both women and considers himself responsible for all the children in the household. However, cracks appear when evidence is presented suggesting that during a trip away from home, boundaries were crossed. The court hears how a visit to a swingers club, alcohol, and poor decisions led to sexual encounters with an unknown individual. This revelation forms the basis of the paternity doubt and introduces the theme seen in many DNA test cheating stories. People regret taking the test only after realizing the truth cannot be undone. As the court listens, the judge emphasizes the concept of justice in jurisprudence, reminding everyone that the law is not here to punish personal lifestyles, but to protect children and uncover facts. Medical documents, calendars, and conception timelines are submitted as evidence, placing the dispute squarely on the legal evidence stage. Judge Lake also explains how an adverse inference in Evidence Act can arise when truths are hidden too long, making honesty not just moral, but legally necessary. The emotional weight intensifies when the father figure admits that regardless of biology, he has already bonded with the child. His testimony reflects a recurring theme found in adoption stories, full episodes, and Supreme Court child support cases, that fatherhood is often defined by presence, not DNA. Still, the court must rely on science, not sentiment. When the DNA results are finally revealed, the courtroom reacts with visible relief as the man is confirmed to be the biological father. This outcome reinforces a core message often discussed in the Truth Changes Everything podcast. Sometimes the truth heals rather than harms. But the court session does not end there. Judge Lauren Lake immediately addresses a second, even more emotionally charged matter involving an older child raised for nearly 2 decades under the same household. The parents admit they kept a secret about possible infidelity years ago, believing silence would protect their son. This moment highlights the dangerous consequences of secrecy, echoing lessons often explored in Celebrate Recovery testimonies and the Divorce Course podcast, where hidden truths eventually resurface with greater force. The teenage son enters court seeking clarity, not conflict. Medical history raises new doubts, and the judge explains how hereditary conditions can reopen long-buried questions. Again, evidence is presented calmly, reinforcing the game-changing attorney podcast principle that preparation and honesty can reshape outcomes. Despite years of uncertainty, the DNA test confirms the man as the biological father, delivering emotional closure and reinforcing the court's role in restoring stability. Judge Lauren Lake uses this moment to explain the deeper relationship between law and justice. The law determines facts, but justice considers the human cost of deception. She warns that while unconventional relationships are not illegal, irresponsibility within them can cause irreversible damage to children. Her words resonate like guidance found in adoption stories, full episodes and discussions around Supreme Court child support. Responsibility does not disappear because circumstances are complicated. The final portion of the court session introduces another couple whose marriage is collapsing under constant accusations and outside interference. Both families have fueled doubts, spreading rumors and social media claims that place immense strain on the relationship. The husband openly questions whether the child is his, citing messages, family testimony, and circumstantial evidence. The wife admits past mistakes made in anger, showing how words spoken without thought can permanently alter trust. Judge Lauren Lake carefully dissects the evidence, separating assumptions from facts. She highlights how repeated accusations can become an adverse inference when unsupported by proof. The courtroom listens as extended family statements are read, demonstrating how public opinion often complicates private disputes. This mirrors discussions found in the Truth Changes Everything podcast, where external voices often deepen emotional wounds rather than resolve them. When the DNA results confirm the husband as the biological father, the emotional release is immediate. Relief replaces suspicion, but Judge Lake cautions that science alone cannot repair a broken marriage. Trust, she explains, must be rebuilt intentionally. Her closing remarks align with the concept of justice in jurisprudence. The court can determine paternity, but healing requires accountability and maturity beyond the courtroom. Throughout the entire session, the court serves as more than a venue for DNA testing. It becomes a space where people confront consequences, where people regret taking actions rather than tests, and where truth reshapes families forever. From polyamorous dynamics to traditional marriages strained by infidelity, every case reinforces one reality. Once evidence is presented, denial no longer holds power. This episode stands as a powerful example of how the legal system balances compassion with clarity. Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom demonstrates that while the law is firm, it leaves room for growth, responsibility, and redemption. Whether dealing with divorce case evidence stage disputes, child support implications, or lifelong identity questions, the court reminds everyone present that truth is not optional, it is essential. As the court proceedings continue under Judge Lauren Lake, the focus shifts from shock to consequence. What began as questions about biology now expands into a broader examination of accountability, trust, and how fragile families become when honesty is delayed. The courtroom is no longer just a place for a DNA test. It becomes a mirror reflecting every choice made behind closed doors. Each person present is forced to confront how their actions, silence, or denial brought them to this moment. Judge Lauren Lake methodically reviews how the evidence stage in a divorce case or family dispute is often misunderstood by the people involved. Many believe emotions, loyalty, or long-term commitment can outweigh facts. However, the court operates on documented timelines, medical confirmation, and scientific certainty. The judge explains that this balance between empathy and objectivity defines the relationship between law and justice. Law uncovers facts. Justice considers how those facts will shape lives moving forward. In the polyamorous family case, the judge addresses the deeper damage caused by secrecy. While the DNA test ultimately confirmed paternity, the emotional cost of doubt remains undeniable. The father admits that during the weeks of uncertainty, he lived in fear of losing a child he already loved. This moment reflects a recurring pattern seen in DNA test cheating stories, where people regret taking steps that introduce doubt but also regret delaying the truth even more. Judge Lake emphasizes that children are never responsible for adult decisions. She explains that in many Supreme Court child support rulings and adoption stories full episodes, the courts consistently prioritize the emotional and financial stability of children over the personal conflicts of adults. Biology may establish responsibility, but consistency and care define parenthood. This principle resonates strongly as the court reflects on how easily a child's sense of security can be shaken by unresolved adult behavior. The discussion naturally moves toward the legal implications of hidden information. Judge Lauren Lake outlines how an adverse inference in Evidence Act can arise when one party knowingly withholds critical facts. In this case, delayed honesty nearly altered legal outcomes and emotional bonds. The judge makes it clear that transparency is not just a moral expectation, but a legal safeguard meant to protect everyone involved, especially minors. As the second paternity matter unfolds involving the teenage son, the courtroom atmosphere becomes noticeably heavier. Years of unanswered questions have shaped this young man's identity, health concerns, and emotional well-being. Judge Lake carefully explains how long-term doubt can be more damaging than difficult truths, a theme often explored in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where healing begins only after full disclosure. The parents acknowledge that their intention was never to deceive out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of breaking a family, fear of losing love, fear of consequences. Judge Lauren Lake addresses this directly, stating that fear-driven decisions often create the very outcomes people are trying to avoid. This aligns with lessons shared in the Divorce Course podcast, where unresolved guilt and silence eventually surface with greater intensity. When the second DNA test confirms biological paternity, the courtroom witnesses not just relief, but closure. Judge Lake takes a moment to explain that closure does not erase the past, but allows individuals to move forward without uncertainty. She reinforces that the law provides answers, but healing requires communication, counseling, and commitment beyond the courtroom walls. The judge then broadens the discussion to include how modern family structures challenge traditional legal assumptions. She acknowledges that society is evolving, but the law remains anchored in responsibility, consent, and protection of children. This perspective echoes discussions often featured on the Game Changing Attorney podcast, where evolving relationships meet established legal frameworks. As the proceedings transition to the final case involving a young married couple, the tone becomes tense once again. The wife seeks to prove her husband's paternity to save their marriage, while the husband arrives burdened by accusations, rumors, and family interference. Judge Lauren Lake immediately identifies the presence of external pressure as a critical factor, noting how outside voices often distort reality and fuel mistrust. The evidence stage reveals a pattern of arguments, impulsive statements, and social media messages that escalated doubts beyond repair. Judge Lake explains how words spoken in anger can become legal fuel, especially when they introduce uncertainty about paternity. This moment reflects a core lesson from the Truth Changes Everything podcast. Some statements cannot be undone once they are believed. Family testimonies are introduced, painting a picture of constant judgment and accusation. Judge Lake carefully distinguishes between hearsay and admissible evidence, reminding everyone that rumors carry no legal weight without proof. This reinforces the importance of critical thinking and restraint in emotionally charged disputes. The husband admits that despite his doubts, he has acted as a father from the beginning. Judge Lake pauses here, highlighting a powerful contradiction seen in many child support and custody cases. Emotional commitment often exists even when belief in biology does not. This internal conflict, she explains, is where law and human emotion most sharply collide. When the DNA results confirm paternity, the emotional shift is immediate. Tears, relief, and vindication replace months of suspicion. Judge Lauren Lake uses this moment to stress that while the test resolved the legal question, the marriage still requires work. Trust, once fractured, must be rebuilt deliberately. She warns both parties that using infidelity or flirtation as retaliation only deepens wounds. Her words echo guidance found in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where personal growth begins with accountability rather than blame. Judge Lake makes it clear that justice is not merely about winning a case. It is about learning from it. As the court session draws toward its conclusion, Judge Lauren Lake reflects on the recurring patterns seen throughout the day: secrecy, fear, impulsive decisions, and delayed honesty. Each case demonstrates how quickly lives unravel when truth is postponed. The courtroom stands as a reminder that while DNA tests provide clarity, they also demand responsibility. This episode reinforces why people continue to turn to the legal system during moments of crisis. The court does not promise comfort, but it delivers certainty. In every case presented, the evidence stage serves as a turning point, a moment where denial ends and reality begins. Ultimately, Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom becomes a space where justice is not just declared, but explained. Each ruling underscores the idea that truth, once revealed, reshapes relationships forever. Whether families are rebuilt or redefined, the outcome always rests on one unchanging principle: honesty is the foundation upon which justice stands. As Judge Lauren Lake brings the final matters of the day to order, the courtroom atmosphere settles into a quiet seriousness. By this stage, everyone present understands that this is no longer just about DNA results. It is about accountability, long-term consequences, and the unavoidable reality that truth changes everything. Each case heard has followed a similar path: doubt, denial, evidence, and finally, resolution. What differs is how each family chooses to move forward once the truth is revealed. Judge Lauren Lake addresses the court with clarity, explaining that the legal system does not exist to shame personal decisions or unconventional lifestyles. Instead, it exists to protect children, establish responsibility, and prevent further harm. This distinction highlights the delicate relationship between law and justice, a balance where facts are determined without prejudice, but outcomes are guided by fairness and responsibility. In reflecting on the polyamorous family case, the judge underscores how trust was not broken by lifestyle choices, but by secrecy. The DNA test confirmed paternity, yet the emotional damage caused by withheld information cannot simply be erased. This reality mirrors themes often discussed in the Truth Changes Everything podcast, where delayed honesty causes deeper wounds than difficult truths ever could. Judge Lake makes it clear that many people regret taking a DNA test not because of the result, but because it forces them to confront choices they hoped would remain hidden. The court then revisits the second paternity matter involving the teenage son. Judge Lauren Lake speaks directly to the parents, reminding them that raising a child under uncertainty, even with love, can create identity questions that surface later in life. This case becomes a powerful example often seen in adoption stories, full episodes, where biology matters less than honesty, but honesty must still come first. The DNA confirmation brings relief, but it also closes a chapter that should have been resolved years earlier. Judge Lake emphasizes that legal closure does not mean emotional repair is automatic. She encourages counseling, open communication, and long-term commitment to healing. This perspective aligns with insights shared in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where acknowledgement of past mistakes becomes the first step toward growth rather than guilt. Turning to the final marital dispute, Judge Lauren Lake addresses the tension that has nearly dismantled a young family. The wife's admission that words spoken in anger triggered years of doubt becomes a focal point. The judge explains that statements suggesting infidelity or uncertainty can create an adverse inference in Evidence Act scenarios, even when later retracted. Once doubt enters a relationship, it reshapes perception, trust, and behavior. The husband's testimony reveals a conflict familiar in many divorce case evidence stage disputes. Despite his doubts, he continued to act as a father, creating an emotional bond that conflicted with his fears. Judge Lake points out that this contradiction is common in court. People emotionally commit while intellectually doubting, which leads to internal turmoil rather than clarity. As extended family influence is discussed, Judge Lauren Lake firmly distinguishes between evidence and noise. Rumors, opinions, and community judgment carry no legal weight, yet they often cause the most damage. This moment reflects discussions frequently raised in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, where external interference complicates otherwise resolvable cases. When the DNA results confirm paternity, Judge Lake pauses to let the moment settle. Relief floods the courtroom, but she cautions against celebrating too quickly. Science resolved the question of fatherhood, but trust must now be rebuilt deliberately. The judge stresses that vindication should never be used as a weapon, and forgiveness must replace resentment if the marriage is to survive. She explains that Supreme Court child support principles consistently prioritize stability and cooperation over blame. The law expects parents to act in the best interest of the child, regardless of past conflict. Judge Lake reminds both parties that their son will grow up shaped by how they handle this moment, not by the DNA result itself. Throughout her closing remarks, Judge Lauren Lake weaves together the central theme of the day: responsibility. Whether in polyamorous households or traditional marriages, responsibility does not change. Children rely on adults to make decisions grounded in honesty, not fear. The court can determine facts, but families must decide how to live with them. Judge Lake also addresses the broader implications of modern relationships, acknowledging that society continues to evolve. However, the legal framework remains rooted in accountability. This perspective reflects ongoing conversations within the Divorce Course podcast, where modern dynamics meet long-standing legal principles. As the court prepares to adjourn, Judge Lauren Lake offers final guidance that resonates across all cases heard. She explains that DNA tests are tools, not solutions. They provide answers, but they do not teach communication, loyalty, or maturity. Those lessons must be learned outside the courtroom. She reminds everyone present that people often regret taking a DNA test only because it ends denial. Yet denial, she stresses, is never a sustainable foundation for family life. The courtroom serves as a place where illusions end, but clarity begins. The judge's final words reinforce the concept of justice in jurisprudence. Justice is not about punishment, but about restoration. Restoration requires truth, responsibility, and the willingness to change. Without those elements, even favorable outcomes can feel hollow. As the session concludes, it becomes clear that each family leaves transformed. Some leave reassured, others humbled, but none unchanged. The evidence stage has passed, the results have been read, and reality has replaced speculation. What remains is choice: to heal, to grow, or to repeat the same mistakes. This episode stands as a reminder that court is not just a destination for conflict, but a turning point. Whether confronting DNA test cheating stories, hidden infidelity, or long-standing doubts, the courtroom forces honesty into the open. And once the truth is known, it demands action. Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom illustrates that while the law delivers answers, justice requires effort beyond the verdict. Families are not repaired by envelopes or paperwork, but by accountability and intention. The truth does not guarantee peace, but it makes peace possible.